Welcome to WOW, our Women of Worth Wednesday. I'm so thrilled to have my friend Julie here. She is beautiful, and for those of you that know Julie, I know a number of people, especially on Instagram, have kind of followed her story. They already know how amazing and fabulous that she is. But I'm so happy today because she's our first official guest on WOW, and so we're working this out on where the camera goes and how it works for us. So welcome if you're here for the very first time, and we're so grateful to have High Five Live kind of hosting this and allowing this to happen. They're committed to sharing inspirational content, and especially at this time of year, I think people want to talk about more inspirational topics, and so it's a great time. As you can see on the description of this video, my intention for today, and Julie's as well, is that we kind of have a joyful conversation about depression.
Yeah.
And that might seem like a paradox, but I think for most of us out in the world, we either struggle with it, have struggled with it, love someone that does struggle with it, and that pretty much covers the entire planet, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to turn the time over to Julie and have her just kind of share a little bit about how she so authentically shows up, especially on social media, and sharing her struggles with depression, and then we'll see where this conversation goes. So, okay. Julie, you want to share?
Yeah. So I have struggled with depression and anxiety for 20 years, and I've always wanted to share my story, and just recently, in the past few years, started making it more public with social media and the technology that we have and the tools that we have, and the sole reason for that being that I just don't want others to feel alone. There is a huge stigma attached to mental health, mental illness. And so there are many that are suffering in silence and suffering alone. And that breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that we lose loved ones to suicide because they don't feel like there's anywhere to turn. And they often feel like they're a burden on others, which we know isn't true, but they don't feel like that. So I have just made it my life's goal and commitment to be a voice and to stand up for those that may not have a voice. And I still struggle every single day. But I have learned how to interlace my life with joy, despite the pain and the suffering of debilitating depression and anxiety. And so that's kind of where my platform comes from, over on my Instagram and just in some of my speaking things.
So when I met Julie, we came together at a lunch that was arranged by some mutual friends. Mm-hmm. And literally, I think she thought I was a freak because the minute I met her, the Spirit just bore witness to me of her light and power and joy and honesty. And I knew immediately that we needed to collaborate on some things, and we have some things coming up, but we're not going to tell you about that yet. And in the process of getting to know her, I feel like we were heart connected almost immediately. And I'd like our viewers to kind of hear a little bit more about the details of how your depression shows up, because for some people it's different. I mean, I often hear in the speaking I do and the work that I do, this is a subject important to me as well because of the suicide of my sister, that the happiest people on the planet, I think Robin Williams is a great example of that.
I just read that quote last night.
The happiest people on the planet sometimes, if not most of the time, are struggling with the deepest, darkest struggles. And so I think sometimes we think we know who struggles with depression, and sometimes that's how it manifests. But how does it show up for you?
Yeah. I mean, that's perfectly put. I think people, and including myself, who struggle with depression and anxiety, are very highly sensitive people. So we feel deep sorrow, but our joy is so intense. So you have that dichotomy of two different things. For me, it's just the kind of depression where you just want to hide in your blanket. It kind of starts with anxiety and depression kind of go in a vicious cycle. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as we talk about the holidays, it's stress triggers anxiety, and then when you're overwhelmed, it's just depression sets in. So one of the hardest things for me is to get out of bed in the morning. And I have 3 little kids, so that's not an ideal situation. But we work around it and we figure out how to manage it. And then it just shows up in my life where I feel very overwhelmed. Like, just brushing my teeth or taking a shower can feel like the most daunting task in the world. And I look at other, quote, normal people.
Yeah, right? Who are those people,
and
right?
I'm just like, what is it like to be without this? Because I've had it
pop
for
out of
so
bed
long.
And
Yeah.
you just go to the store and...
Well, and I know that everyone has their trials, and I know that most people don't love popping out of bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a difference between being crippled and like literally paralyzed by fear and having panic attacks and your heart rate high in your bed between like, I'm just tired.
Yeah.
And so, and it's a fine line. And everyone should be validated to each of their stories and their trials. And it's not like one person,
defines depression
and anxiety.
I just saw a quote that had this explanation: anxiety is like having the most horrible rash that itches but on the inside of you.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a beautiful description of what it feels like, and the fact that it's on the inside, you can't always see it. I mean, one of the things I love about Julie is her outward beauty, how beautifully she decorates her home. She's really talented if you follow her on Instagram. And so if someone just didn't know you and you hadn't shared, they had never read one of your posts that are super honest,
Right.
they could easily say, oh my gosh, she's just like, look how beautiful her children are, and she has this supportive, great husband, and her mantle is the most beautiful Christmas mantle I've ever seen, and she's so lovely. And so I think I love what you shared, that we should be super sensitive, that we validate that for everyone it shows up. I love kind of how you showed that, the debilitating feeling of, I can't seem to even figure out how to get out of bed, let alone brush my teeth to do the next thing. If you can think about the fact that there are people on the planet still that I meet that have never experienced depression or anxiety. They really don't understand it. And so what a gift for you to share just that concept. Like, for those of you that may be listening you're only watching this because you want to have more sympathy, I just applaud you, because maybe you don't understand why your spouse, your daughter...
And that's okay if you don't understand.
Yeah, right. And so that's why we have these conversations, because if you don't understand what that feels like, you could be like, well, why don't you just go for a walk?
Yeah.
Or why don't you read your scriptures and then you'll feel better. So, which is a good segue. What have you found to help you specifically through the holidays with the triggers of a lot of moms? I shared a video this week that's gotten a lot of views because I talked about how, especially at this time of year, moms think we're the Christmas elves that are supposed to make all the magic happen, do it on a budget, right? And still have these meaningful Christ-centered experiences, right? So what have you found that's helped you during the holidays? And then maybe any of the tools that you, in 20 years, you've learned some tools to help you infuse your life, like you said, with joy.
And I'm still not good. Like right now, I'm already feeling holiday burnout.
We've got 12 days of Christmas, right?
I was thinking about this as we were coming up from for this interview, and it's the things were simplify. Learn how to say no. Learn what traditions and values are really important to you, and that you can't let go, but then let go of the fluff. I
love that.
I took a page from your book.
Oh!
It was the Thanksgiving.
Oh.
When you defining your values. Yeah. So you said for Thanksgiving your values were connection, and was it leisure?
And leisure.
And so
which
you
has been really hard for me, right?
Right, because we all love a beautiful table spread.
Right.
But
or
you did paper plates.
Right. And then connection sometimes doesn't feel like leisure. And sometimes leisure doesn't feel like connection. Because leisure for me sometimes is Netflix in my bed, right?
Yeah.
Right? But sometimes I feel like, wait, I haven't seen my daughter. So those are my 2 values. I learned that tool this year. So thanks for sharing that.
No, and that definitely helped me, because I do love to create beautiful things. But you know what? Like, you can still create a beautiful table with paper plates, and then you don't have these dishes piling up and this nagging, overwhelming feeling where you're just going to spiral out of control.
Yeah.
And another thing that we were just a little bit creative about, we weren't going to do Christmas cards, but for me, that's important.
Okay.
So I couldn't let it go, but I took my husband and I out of the picture and just focused on the kids. It's just the kids in the picture this year,
love that.
which took a huge amount of stress out of it. And so even with the things that you do value, you can be a little bit creative about how you go about it.
Yeah.
And then there will be other things that we let go of. And then I think a big thing is just to be okay to say no. And that's really hard. It's really, really hard.
Listen, I would say the two things that you've shared that I think are worth repeating is that choose the values. They don't have to be your to-do list. They're your values. So connection and leisure for me just help me push towards something. So if I am presented with another invitation to another party or whatever, I have to check in and go, does this add to leisure or connection? Where am I feeling right? But the fact that you're saying give yourself permission to say no and adjust, I always say God says no to us all the time. And we're not thinking he's not super loving.
Nope, not at all.
So I think no's are one of the hardest things, especially for women to do, because we trigger in our minds kind of guilt. Like we should be saying yes to everybody and everything, and then we'll be living meaningful lives.
Yeah.
So I love that.
And this all kind of comes under, I think, self-care.
Yes.
And every January for the past probably decade, I crash big time. Because I have two, my husband's birthday and my daughter's birthday, first week of January after New Year's. And so I'm really trying to be mindful this year of like avoiding that crash or avoiding the severity of that crash.
Okay.
Where I just literally can't get out of bed for a week.
Yeah.
Because I'm tired of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so those things, avoiding burnout, and you really have to figure out how to
see
avoid
it around
burnout.
the corner before it's kind of coming, and be aware that like, wait, I tend to have this pattern.
Yeah.
And I tend to be triggered. I'm the same. I have a December son birthday, and then Christmas, and then a January daughter birthday, right?
Yes.
So
it like doesn't end with the holidays.
all of a sudden you're like, and I always say it starts with Halloween for moms, right? So then it's Halloween, and then we go to Thanksgiving, and then we go to, if you have a kid that has a December birthday, and then you have Christmas, and then you have New Year's, and then, right, all the way to Valentine's Day, right? So I love that. So what are you going to do? What's maybe your one takeaway tool that you're going to do to kind of avoid that hook?
So we've had a really busy couple of weeks, and now it's just simplifying. I'm looking at my calendar. I'm seeing what things I can cancel and just be at home with my children. More than anything, my children want to be, my children are young. I have 3, 8 and under, and they want to be home playing games, doing puzzles. That's what energizes me. And I'm out here like, let's go to this event. Let's go to this event.
And they want it simple.
And, I mean, they love the events, but then mom and dad are cranky and tired, and they're cranky and tired. And so I'm like, okay, let's really go back to our values.
Yes.
Of having harmony. You know, one of mine is just harmony and happiness, and just kind of like simmer down on racing to and fro.
I love that.
And then I hope that as I enter into January, I'll have a reserve bank of energy.
I love that, because you haven't burned it all out in December. I think that's a perfect reminder for all of you that are watching. And I see people from all over the world, which is really touching to me, that through technology, we can take away some of the stigma on this subject, talk about it in a way that connects to literally, I see people from Africa and Scotland that have tuned in today to have this conversation, because it needs to happen. It needs to happen for men and women, but especially for women. Women of Worth Wednesday, I always say, I love to have men join us. So thank you for those that have. And I love it when men tag and share these videos with women they value that are of worth to them. But I also think that there's such power, like having Julie in my life and hearing her story has strengthened me. And
vice versa.
Thank you. and I think about the woman that had the issue of blood in the scriptures. I talk about this often when I talk about depression. Her struggle was the 12 years of isolation. It wasn't just the issue of blood. And it was that she had tried so many things and nothing had worked. But she kept trying. And because she kept trying, she was there when the Savior came.
Yeah.
And when she reached out to touch his robe and she was healed, he said to her, it's your faith. And I always say her healing came in the 12 years of trying. Even though in her mind, she thought all of her other friends were going off living their lives. In her culture, she had to be isolated with that issue of blood. And depression and anxiety can be very isolating.
Very isolating.
So thank
and
you.
I think the holidays heighten that.
Yeah, yeah, because it looks like everyone else is doing Norman Rockwell, right? And having it work out without stress. And so I honor you and I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
And for sharing kind of just the honesty of giving permission to everyone to say no and realize that the reality of what we're living is that we don't know most of the time what other people are living behind their closed doors, right? So maybe just the kindness that we can share in the grocery stores and out and about. You never know who has worked really hard to just get out of bed, get in the car, and get to Walmart that day.
And like we were talking before, the grumpiest people are probably the people that need the most kindness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. This time has gone too fast, and so I could talk to Julie for hours, and we will probably have her back on if she'll agree to do that.
Sweet.
And thank you for all of you that have joined and liked High Five Live and participated in it in the past, and maybe shared it with new friends. We hope that this message has supported you in finding joy in this holiday season, even if you deal with, and especially if you deal with depression and anxiety. So remember your values, remember to say no, and have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And I love you, Julie.